Hi there, I'm Chris Glover. Thanks for joining us this Saturday evening. 6 months after a significant oil leak into Mimico Creek that impacted animals and plant life, the creek has found itself in some new trouble. Another spill into the creek and something even more bizarre, tires, hundreds of them. Anam Khan is live there for us tonight. And Anam, we can see those tires all around you. Tell us more.
Chris, yes, I am surrounded by tires, and the city says this is illegal dumping. It's just surrounded by tires. I'm so sorry. The city says a fine for this would be $500 for anyone dumping on city or private property, but nobody has been fined yet. A peaceful stream with a giant eyesore. Hundreds of tires sit on Mimico Creek, scattered and stacked, tucked under the Skyway Avenue Bridge, spilling toward the creek and even onto the street along with other garbage. The city says it's illegal dumping, and it's likely been happening for months.
Basically, it's just littering, right? You know, it's an environmental disaster. We don't want to see garbage thrown around.
Roy Chan's golf course backs onto the stream. Although golfers can't see the tires from the course, he's concerned as a neighbor. He says his employees alerted officials in February. Since then, the tires have only been growing in number.
Just horrible. I hope they find the people that did it. And the city's been working hard to try to clean it up over the past few days.
The city says cleanup will likely take several days. It also says it plans on storing the tires until they can be recycled. But no doubt the tires are hazardous for the environment, says this expert. She says they are harming the creek and the few fish that can survive in it.
People should not be illegally dumping tires. Tires do contain some compounds that are toxic that leach into the water over time.
Unfortunately, the tires haven't been the only problem at the creek recently. Cleanup was underway last week after an oil-like substance got into the water, the city says. This comes 6 months after a fire at a chemical plant spilled toxic sludge into the Mimico Creek, impacting plant and animal life along the way. The city says the source of the recent spill is a catch basin on private property near Dundas and the East Mall. In a statement to CBC, the city said its priority is to thoroughly complete the cleanup and continue to assess the source of the spill before any potential further actions are considered. Diamond says if it's a small spill, it will dilute and flush down the creek into Lake Ontario.
Oil is naturally degraded. It will degrade relatively quickly. However, it's another thing if there's a hazardous substance in that oil. A hazardous substance could be pesticides. It could be another industrial chemical.
The good news is that no animals seem to be injured, according to the Toronto Wildlife. They did say that they found a suspicious-looking duck, but no animals seem to be hurt after the spill or even by the dump tires. They received no reports of that.
Okay, Anam, well, that's good news. But still, I'm looking behind you in that shot, and there are a ton of tires there. So what are police saying about all of this?
So I did reach out to the Toronto Police Service, and they said they're not investigating because there is no criminal incident. They told me to reach out to the city, and the city says they haven't fined anybody yet, and they don't know who did this.
All right, Anam, thank you very much for this. Back downtown, Toronto police have arrested 2 men in connection with a drug investigation at Clarence Square Park. Officers executing a search warrant at the park's tent encampment just before 8:30 Friday night. It's alleged that a quantity of drugs and a replica firearm were found inside a tent and seized by police. 2 men are facing various charges and were scheduled to appear in court today. Ontario's Special Investigations Unit is urging people who witnessed the stabbing of a Toronto police officer yesterday to come forward. The violent incident happening early in the afternoon yesterday after police responded to a call for a man in crisis in the city's West End. A 22-year-old officer was stabbed in the leg while trying to apprehend a man, and an officer then fired their gun. This was the 4th Toronto police officer injured on the job in the past 2 weeks alone. The Toronto Police Association president today calling on the mayor and city councillors to put more support behind police in Toronto.
A few years, we've had almost 10 police officers across Canada murdered because they're police officers. And this has to stop. I think the reality we're looking at right now is police officers are becoming more of a target for individuals. And that respect which police officers in the uniform once held doesn't seem to be there anymore. And that should be concerning to the public, concerning to government, concerning to everybody out there. Because for me, as a police officer, if they don't respect the police uniform, what does that say about everyone else in the community as well?
Now, in this latest case from yesterday, police say that both the officer and the man shot are in stable condition in hospital. And the SIU says they know through video surveillance that a number of people were in the area at the time of the shooting, and they're asking anybody with information to get in touch. A showdown over the future of Toronto's vacant home tax appears set for City Council next week. Mayor Olivia Chow says the levy needs a complete overhaul, and some councillors want it gone altogether. Clara Pasica takes a closer look.
We're cleaning up this mess.
Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow has been saying that a lot this month after the city's rocky vacant home tax rollout. Tens of thousands of people had their homes deemed vacant, but in most cases that wasn't the case. According to a new report from staff, about 167,000 homes in Toronto were deemed vacant, a huge leap from last year when just 11,000 were deemed vacant. Some people have been coming to City Hall in alarm, armed with notices claiming they owe hefty bills, and thousands have filed appeals online. This resident, who lives in his home, got one of the notices not understanding the declaration requirement.
Well, we got a letter with a huge tax bill, and that freaked my partner out because I was supposed to be the one responsible for filing. So we've put in we've gone online and put in a request for a reassessment. We're waiting to hear back.
City staff and councillors are assuring residents if their home is occupied, they won't need to pay. Chow says the failed rollout this year of the tax policy she inherited has had consequences.
The program was designed in a way that was deeply flawed.
The mayor says at least one city staffer lost their job over it. But regardless, now it's up to council to fix it all, she says. This week, council will consider a number of moves aimed at more than Band-Aid solutions, with some councillors looking to what could be done better next time and others looking for the city to change course altogether. The mayor and Councillor Shelley Carroll want to take a deep look at what went wrong and explore other ways the city could determine if a home is vacant, like looking at existing bills for city utility services. Meanwhile, Councillor Stephen Holliday has put his name behind a motion to nix the tax.
I am very confident that it has eroded people's confidence in government, and I'd be happy to do away with this tax.
Councillor Brad Bradford says there is merit in using the tax to incentivize people to put vacant homes on the market, but he's filed something called an administrative inquiry with the city to understand how it went well last year but so wrong this year.
I want to understand what the extent of the damage has been in 2024.
With Toronto residents as divided as council,
yeah, I'd get rid of it. It's just a lot of administrative nonsense, really.
Seems to be a lot of vacant homes that are being used as investments and nobody's living there, so it's driving up home prices and the younger people can't afford to buy a house. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
It's unclear what the fate of the vacant home tax will be. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
And here's a live look for you at Windsor. Beautiful sunny skies. And guess this, it is 17 degrees right now. But winds have caused some serious issues across the province, especially in the southwest, knocking down trees and power lines, especially north of London near Walkerton. Hydro One crews have been working throughout the day to restore power to affected areas. And earlier today, some 20,000 customers were without electricity. Now that figure is down to under 10,000. And Sophia Kambalia is joining us now. So, Sophia, I'm guessing that it was those strong winds that pushed out the clouds that we dealt with this morning, giving us these nice sunny skies this afternoon.
Yeah, clearing and variable conditions, a benefactor of those really warm and very gusty southwesterly winds that you just talked about there, Chris. 80 kilometers an hour for some of you in London at peak wind gusts. We hit some 70, 75s in parts of the Toronto and southern and southwestern Ontario as well. A warm sector that, yes, lifted us up into the 20s. The warm and above seasonal trend will continue really for the next 24 to 36 hours, as will the unsettled weather. Look at that, 72 kilometers an hour peak wind gusts in Oshawa, 70 in Kitchener, as well as the crews are out there continuing to fix this. Dry conditions, though, only really for another 12 hours or so as wet weather returns in for Sunday. Let's extrapolate a little bit and look at how wet it's been this past work week alone. In April, for example, some of you have already received over 100 millimeters of rainfall. There is more incoming. A lot of this, for many of you, came just the last couple days, April 11th to 12th. Look at that, nearly 50 millimeters in the Toronto area between the 11th and 12th. And there's more coming for an unsettled Sunday, maybe even with the first thunderstorm risk of the year for many. We'll talk in the long range a little bit more about the drought concerns and how this is a good news story, as some of the areas that were hit hard with wildfires last year have actually got a real good soaking of rain. A quick look before I let you go at some of the popcorn storms that could come for your Sunday morning, with heavy rainfall totals and potentially a second round in the afternoon. And I'll tell you about, yet again, we're more wet and windy and active weather in the long range, Chris. It's a broken record at this point.
All right, great. We will stick around for that. Thank you, Sophia. And we do have some major international news to tell you about as well tonight. 6 people have been killed in a stabbing attack at a shopping mall in Sydney, Australia. Police say the male suspect has been shot dead by an officer.
Today, Bondi Junction was the scene of shocking violence, but it was also witness to the humanity and the heroism of our fellow Australians. Our brave police, our first responders, and of course everyday people who could never have imagined that they would face such a moment.
8 others were taken to hospital with injuries, including a 9-month-old baby. Witnesses say they saw a woman and her baby being attacked. Reports indicate the woman is among those killed. Officials have not released information on the motive of the attack, but they say they don't believe it's terrorism related. Who could forget this sight? Crowds of people gathering last Monday afternoon to watch the total solar eclipse. Scientists and astronomers had been clear Niagara Falls was one of the best places to catch the incredibly rare event. And as hordes of people planned to descend on the city, the region announced a preemptive emergency declaration. Now that move is being criticized, especially by city officials and the tourism industry in Niagara Falls, saying it scared away potential visitors and reduced the economic impact of that critical moment. Niagara Falls Mayor Jim Diodati is one of those people speaking out today, and the mayor is joining us now. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So, Jim, what do you think was lost from the region's emergency declaration?
Well, a lot of people made the decision, the conscious decision, not to attend. And I mean, I'd be the exact same. I wouldn't travel to any destination with my family if I knew there was an emergency declaration. I'd be worried about what ifs. And then after the fact, you know, why would you take your family to a place that they had a declaration of an emergency? Even though we didn't know what it was, but a lot of people read between the lines and thought, there's something they're not telling us. They're putting us on high alert. And I can tell you, we fielded a lot of calls. I know I received lots of calls from hotel owners and executives and management saying, what's going on? We've got mass cancellations, and it's unfortunate. It created a lot of panic, a lot of concern, and it took away from a lot of people that would have enjoyed it in Niagara Falls.
Well, the region says that the declaration was needed to ensure there were enough resources in place to manage the crowds. What do you say to that?
Well, nothing really changed. From when the declaration was made to the actual event, nothing changed. I mean, we already had arranged for the extra cellular towers. We already made arrangements for extra GO trains, for extra parking facilities, for several emergency operations centers, for many levels of police. Nothing really changed. It wasn't necessary. It was over the top.
Okay, and regional officials, though, also are saying that the declaration was discussed with all municipalities prior to being issued. Did you raise any concerns ahead of time, or was it only kind of after the impact that you thought this was a problem?
It wasn't raised with city officials. There was no discussion whatsoever. So it's unfortunate. We did have discussions after the fact. I did speak to the regional chair, who I very much respect, And I just said, I was really disappointed. You know, you're a good communicator, and typically you would have spoken with us first. You wouldn't have made this decision unilaterally, and we'd have given you another perspective and maybe talked you out of it. But at least have the discussion, especially it had a bigger impact on Niagara Falls than anywhere else in the region. So, I mean, I still have a great deal of respect for the chair. I think this was a decision, if we had to go back, probably would have been done differently.
And he's even admitted that as well, actually. I also wonder, what about the cloudy forecast and expensive hotel rooms that people were hearing about in the days leading up to the eclipse? Do you think that that also might have scared people away?
Well, for sure, everything leads to the same outcome. I mean, number one, above and beyond, was for sure the emergency declaration, hands down, that had the biggest impact. Then next, I'd say weather, because, you know, Mother Nature has a big impact, and we are very strong in the rubber tire market, the people who drive here, and many people make game time decisions based on weather, and it was a little bit iffy. And then, of course, third, the last thing I'd say is hotel prices, because people know in advance. And hotel would have been booked in advance, and it's dynamic pricing. Same as if you were to go to Disney during spring break, you know you'll pay more than if you go there during the summer. So people expect to pay more, but I can tell you, you know, there was a lot of media coverage around high price rooms, but the majority of the rooms were reasonable. Yeah, they're high season pricing, but not over the top. And I know there were a lot of hotel rooms that were available the weekend of and the day of the eclipse that ended up being empty.
Now, despite all of that, we're looking at all these pictures of so many people there. We know that an estimated 200 to 300,000 people were there in Niagara Falls to see the moment. What is, at the end of the day, your takeaway from all of this?
Well, I appreciate you asking, Chris. You know, the end of the day, the takeaway, in my opinion, it was fantastic. I mean, Mother Nature can do for us what we could never do for ourselves. She gave us the great natural wonder of the falls, one of the great celestial events of the universe. And of course, she gave us enough good weather where the skies opened at precisely the right time, right around 3:18, 3:20, where everybody in Niagara Falls got to experience the eclipse and to hear the roaring of the crowds on the American side. And then on to the Canadian side, it sounded like the wave at the Rogers Centre as the crowd roaring. It was so spectacular as we all looked up. And it was a moment in time. We all communed with nature, with each other. It was spectacular. And I think the long-term residual impact is that Niagara Falls, although already known, has been taken from the back burner to the front burner. We're part of the discussion, which means hopefully we're going to be part of the future vacation plans. It's going to be the beginning of the return of the international visitor, which has lagged behind since COVID. But I'm confident that this exposure around the world is going to help us.
Niagara Falls getting lucky one more time. I just love it. All right, Jim, thank you so much for joining us on the program this Saturday.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Niagara Falls Mayor Jim Diodati. Welcome back. A group of Westview Centennial High School students got their G1 license today, courtesy of a program with Toronto Police and the Children's Breakfast Clubs meant to help young people facing barriers.
As police officers, we are obviously there to conduct public safety, but driving, as we all know, is a very key essential component to safety on the roads.
I want to make sure that our students have access to things that all students their age have access to. So getting this kind of support from the community partners that have pulled together to ensure that students can have this great piece, an important piece of identification, along with the opportunity to be drivers and all that will bring with it. You know, we're very, very pleased to see that happen for our students.
And students also heard about the dangers of stunt driving as well as distracted and impaired driving. And the program aligns with Toronto's Vision Zero road safety plan. And that program focuses on reducing traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries on Toronto streets down to zero. Turning to hockey now, and the Leafs are taking to the ice for their final home game of the regular season tonight. As the team gears up for the playoffs, Austin Matthews is gearing up for another milestone, hoping to score his 70th goal of the season.
These kinds of things are nice to reflect on for a little while, but obviously there's a bigger goal in mind, and so that's kind of where my head's at.
All right, so if he doesn't hit the historic mark tonight, the Leaf superstar will have 2 games to do it. Only 8 players in the NHL history have scored 70 goals in one season.
Down on a splitter. Hickey takes strike 3. Rang in as a four-seam fastball at the top of the zone, but Yariel Rodriguez, the mystery man, with a good first impression at Polar Park.
Not the mystery man anymore. Yariel Rodriguez made his major league debut on the mound today for the Blue Jays. The 27-year-old Cuban righty was called up from the minors to make the start against the Colorado Rockies, and it was a solid first outing for him. In 3 innings of action, he striked out 6 batters, allowing just 1 run, and the Jays went on to win 5-3. And some beautiful weather this afternoon for a ball game, Sophia, hey?
Yeah, it cleared up quite nicely after a week of rain. And this was the storm track we could have had during the eclipse. So even though it was cloud cover, it worked out to be the better of the 2 versions, still holding on to nearly 20-degree warmth in parts of southwestern Ontario. Sunny skies, but it won't hold on for last. Yes, you hold the warmth for your Sunday. 25 degrees potentially in parts of Sarnia and down to Windsor as well. But it'll come with the price tag of rain and storms. Now, we hit the mid-20s this past week in places like St. Catharines. Again, came with the rain, and that will be a similar story in for Sunday. Main threats: heavy rains, small hail, widespread non-severe thunderstorm risk in 2 rounds. Watch it play out. First, Sunday morning around your breakfast hour and early morning hours, some popcorn storms with some locally really heavy rainfall. This is that second round. Less confidence for how much that will play out for those of you in the afternoon, but this line of storms with daytime heating could turn quite severe stateside into the afternoon hours. Also, the chance that if you do get that round of morning storms, it could come with a cluster of storms and quite a bit of lightning as you are waking up and having that bowl of cereal in the morning. We'll do a lot for the drought monitor. We'll talk about that in a minute, but first let's talk about rainfall amounts. Pretty sure thing that many of you will have that 10 to 20 millimeters of rainfall. Locally heavier though if you do have a storm come through your area, and pretty surefire bet that many of you will be over 100 millimeters of rainfall before this month is over. So far we've got over 130% of our normal rainfall average, which should just be about 63 millimeters. This was what the drought conditions looked like at the end of March. Very dry conditions to the north and to the east of the province. Over the last 10 days, a ton of rain in those areas, especially in the western Quebec area, where we saw a lot of wildfires, very severe last season. This is good news to prep us for this upcoming wildfire season. And if you like that, more to come this upcoming work week. Colorado, though, moves in for a very unsettled day on Wednesday, improving day on Thursday. And next week, we'll talk a little bit more about, do April showers really bring May flowers? We're still waiting for the peak of that cherry blossom season, but all this rain hopefully will come at the right time, Chris.
I hope you're right. And anybody out there that was cursing the rain can now hear all of those good pieces of information and think, okay, it was worth it.
The tulips are happy.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching.